In this video, we will show you how to replace your fuel pump assembly on this Ford F-150. This will be located inside of your fuel tank. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing you need to do is make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. We're going to be opening the fuel system. After that, we want to make sure that we relieve fuel pressure from in the system. For that, we're going to make our way along the driver's side frame under the driver's door. Now that we're under the driver's side door, along the frame, you can see this plastic panel. We're going to dislodge it. You don't have to fully remove it. Along one side or the other, you're going to find that you have a push clip to remove. For this, I'm going to use a small prying device. I have a trim tool. You can use a flat blade screwdriver, whatever you need to. Now that we have that panel down, we have a clear view of several wiring harnesses. We're focusing on this one right here. It should be attached to that frame. Ours is actually separated, that happens. We want to press in on the locking tab, and then we're going to try to separate this. Once you do have it separated, you want to give it a close inspection, confirming you do not see any corrosion in this area. If you do, it needs to be dealt with. Let's leave these two areas separated, and now we're going to make our way into the passenger compartment so we can attempt to start the vehicle. What you may find when you attempt to start the vehicle, it starts and then stalls on you, or it doesn't start at all. That's exactly what we're looking for. We're trying to release pressure from inside the fuel system. Perfect. Now at this point, we're going to put the key in the on position. We don't have to crank anymore, but we want to make sure we have our transmission in neutral. Now let's make our way under the hood. It's also recommended to make sure you disconnect your negative battery terminal. So we're along the passenger side of the engine compartment with an 8mm wrench. Go ahead and turn that mounting nut just enough that you can remove it and set it aside. At this point, we have our ventilation on. We're going to be opening the fuel system. We'll open the fuel door and remove the cap. Just a quick inspection of that seal, and you can set that aside. With that out of the way, look inside this area. You're going to find that you have 3 7mm headed mounting bolts. We're going to remove those so we can dislodge the fuel filler neck from the bed of the vehicle. This is just going to give us a little bit of wiggle room. After that, we're making our way down inside the driver's side wheel well. Thorough inspection of those mounting bolts as we continue on. Now let's make our way down inside the wheel well. Now inside of the wheel well, we can see our fuel filler neck. It leads down to this mounting point. I like to loosen this clamp. We'll slide it out of the way. That is also going to give us some wiggle room here. For this, I'm using a 1/4-inch socket. Now that I have that loose, we can pause here. Now let's safely continue under the vehicle. Now we're going to start dislodging our rear drive shaft from the rear differential. You need to make sure you've chalked those front wheels before removing these mounting bolts. Let's make a clear marking on these two pieces. To remove your mounting bolts, you're going to need to have a 12mm 12-point socket. Let's get that first bolt out of there. A thorough inspection of all hardware as we continue on. Replace anything weak or damaged as necessary. Now we can rotate that drive shaft. Now for this third bolt, I'm just going to start it back in a couple threads, and now we'll continue on to the last mounting bolt. Now we're going to attempt to remove the drive shaft from that rear differential. I'm going to use a rubber mallet, but before we go ahead and break this free, a couple things to think about. When we do break this free, it's going to want to come down, and we have to rest it someplace. Typically for me, I like to remove the entire drive shaft by pulling it out and away from the transfer case. Otherwise, you can just hang it aside. If you did remove it from the transfer case, there's the probability fluid might make its way out of the transfer case. Let's get that bolt out of there. Now we can see where the drive shaft goes into the transfer case. We have a collection receptacle under this area. Carefully set that aside. Do not damage your rear drive shaft. And you can see that is dripping a little. We'll just use some compressed air on the top of the fuel tank to clean any miscellaneous debris. Now up along the top of the fuel tank, there's going to be several different fuel lines, evap lines, and some electrical connectors, but it's easiest to gain access to those if we were to lower the fuel tank. So what we're going to do is carefully apply some support under here with a jack that we can adjust the height. After that, we're going to remove each one of our two fuel tank straps. We're using a 13mm for the mounting bolt here. Now we'll start pivoting the strap. We're going to remove it from its next mounting point on the inboard side. For the front strap, we can see this rectangular port. Just go ahead and lift up that strap, remove it. A thorough inspection of the strap, of course. Let's move along to the rearward strap next. For this strap, we're also using a 13mm for the mounting bolt, but the pivot point will be a little different. For this one, we're actually going to have to pivot the strap enough that we can remove it from its triangular slot. Now we can carefully start lowering this down. We can't go very far because we still have those lines and wires attached along the top of the tank. Let's have a look up along the top. Along the back side of the fuel tank, you're going to find that you have two evap lines. We need to disconnect each of these. I like to use a tiny bit of penetrant just to help things break free easily. Now for each of these clips, you're going to find that you have a yellow locking tab. We want to depress that inward. Then we can separate the lines. The process for one's the exact same thing as the other. I'm just going to use some pliers. We're going to squeeze on that yellow tab. Now we should be able to pivot this. We're trying to break it free, and we'll separate the two pieces. It's common to have some debris in this area holding everything up. There we are. On to the next one. As you can tell, these are two different sizes. You don't need to worry about mixing them up. Clean and thoroughly inspect each one of these lines, and we'll continue on. Along the front of your fuel tank, we can see a fuel line leading all the way over to our fuel filter. We're going to have to dislodge this, and then we'll continue on to our next line right along here. To dislodge this, we're just going to use some small long nose pliers. You can see that there's a small tab. Take hold of that, give it a slight tug, and then disconnect the line. Of course, we will recycle all of this fluid properly. Now we've got our next line here. For this one, we're going to press in on this yellow portion. You can either do it by hand, you can use a small prying device, or even some pliers. Pull that off of there, and of course a quick inspection. Now we've lowered the fuel tank down so we can gain access up along the top of the fuel tank. There isn't very much room here, but the first thing that we're looking for is our fuel filler neck tube. You can see that it has a 6mm headed clamp here. We're going to loosen that enough that we can remove the fuel filler neck tube from the actual fuel tank. There we are. Now once you have that hose separated, you need to make sure it's not dry rotted, cracked, or damaged in any way. Still soft and pliable. Now that we have the filler neck disconnected, we still have this tube leading to the top. We want to disconnect this as well. It has a green locking tab. We'll press that in and pull this up and out of place. There we are. We'll get that off of there. Now it's time to pay attention to some electrical wiring harnesses. We'll start with this smaller wiring harness, which leads all the way over here. We'll dislodge it from this other harness. For this one, I'm going to be using a small pocket screwdriver. It has a locking tab. I'm trying to get under it so I can pull this out and away. No corrosion there. We have our larger wiring harness next. This has a red locking tab that you need to dislodge. Just make your way in between with a flat blade screwdriver, give a small twist. We're trying to pry this out and away. It doesn't need to be fully removed, it just has to be separated. If it does happen to come out, you just want to make sure you find it so you can reinstall it. Now this has a locking tab right in this area. Squeeze it in and pull this out of place. Now we're looking pretty good up along the top of the tank. Of course there is more to do, but we can do this once we have it lower and we can easily gain access. Let's bring this down nice and slow. As we do so, you want to make sure you have nothing still attached along the top of the tank which could get damaged. Now we're in a safe area that we can work along the top of the fuel tank. Let's start disconnecting some more lines. For this one with the blue connector, you know exactly what to do. We have to pull out on that tab first. I used pliers before. You can also use a pocket screwdriver or pretty much anything for a prying device. Now we're going to press the rest of this inward and lift this up and off. Quick inspection, as always. Let's continue on. Now we have a yellow locking tab here. This is exactly the same, just a different color, same process. There we are. We're switching our tools. For this one, we just squeeze in on that locking tab. Nice. Let's set this aside. After you've cleaned the top of this as well as possible, the next thing we're going to do is attempt to turn our locking ring counterclockwise. It's made out of metal. We need to make sure we use a brass punch of some sort so we do not create a spark. When you do this, you might find that fuel makes its way out of any of these ports, so go ahead and protect that area so nothing makes its way into your face. Now I'm going to be using a brass punch and my rubber mallet. I'm attempting to go through pretty much any one of these slots that I can grab onto to tap this counterclockwise. We're paying attention to the locking tabs in comparison to the slots on the locking ring. Remove your locking ring. Give it a thorough inspection. If it looks like it's rusted, rotted, or weak, you have to replace it. I'm going to clean this up, but it looks okay. We'll set it aside. We'll start lifting this up. Now there is still another fuel line inside this area that we have to dislodge. Just like the other locking tabs, we have that one area that you need to gently pry out, and then the second portion you're forcing towards the line so we can pull this out of place. There we are. We can tuck that inside the fuel tank. Let's continue on lifting this up. Keep in mind you still have your level float that will need to be removed. There it is, friend. With that out of place, the next thing we'll do is remove our sealing ring. You can dispose of that properly. Where that sealing ring is on the fuel tank itself, you can see a small groove. Clean the entire area, make sure there's no miscellaneous debris. As you clean, make sure you're not forcing anything inside of the fuel tank. This is extremely important. Now, if you look right here, if I was to leave this here and continue on with a brand new sealing ring and my fuel pump assembly, I might have a vapor leak. That can be dangerous. Just make our way around one more time here. Oh yeah, there's a small area right there. Okay, so now it's time to prepare for installation. We're going to start with our sealing ring all the way around this area that we just finished cleaning. After you have that, we're going to continue bringing the fuel pump assembly over towards this area. We need to make sure that we reattach our fuel line inside prior to reinstalling everything. You don't want to forget this. Let's start bringing this down into position. We're starting with a level float. Pivoting it down, we'll rotate as needed so we can align our fuel line. That's going to go right into this area here. Line it up, press it on, listen for a click, and make sure it is secured properly. This is extremely important. Once you can tell that it does feel secured, you need to lock it down. We're pressing this locking tab inward. One more tug. Let's get this into position. Now we're focusing on this area here. Along the top of your fuel pump assembly, you can see that there is this tab with an arrow. Now looking at the fuel tank, you can see another arrow. Let's go ahead and align those two areas. We're pressing this down. Continuing on, we need to install our locking ring. The locking ring is going to sit over each one of these locking tabs. Pay close attention to each of those tabs. If even one of them is off kilter, this might not be level and you might find that you have fuel vapors or even a fuel leak. Now it's time for our rubber mallet and brass punch. This time we're coming through the same slots, but we're bringing it clockwise, locking it in. Just check over here as well. Take your time and confirm everything is properly secured. Now with that in place, let's start bringing our lines back into position. We want to align them and press them down. Listen for an audible click from each and give it a tug upward. After that, make sure you lock them in. One more confirmation. Moving along to our next fuel line. Once again, press it on, listen for a click. Audible click, lock it down, and a tug. Now we can get this over to the vehicle. Now we're bringing the fuel tank up close to being in position. Of course, we do want to leave a little area so we can gain access along the top. Now that we have this up high enough, let's continue on to our electrical connectors. So I'm going to start with the larger one. This one has the red locking tab. Line it up, press it on, listen for a click. A slight tug to confirm it is in place properly, and then lock it down by driving in that red locking tab. There we go. Now I've got that red locking tab pressed all the way in, one last confirmation on that. Now we have our next electrical connector, that's all the way over towards the inboard side. Just go ahead and line that up, press it in. Once again, an audible click. Make sure it's properly secured in place. Let's secure that wiring harness. Just press it right on there. Now we have our vent line. Press that on there, listen for a click. Pay close attention up along the top of this area. Double check and confirm everything is properly secured before continuing on any further. Next, we need to align our fuel filler neck with the top of the tank right here. We're going to try to align this, press it on as far as possible, and tighten our 6mm headed clamp. There we are, we got that lined up. Just press that on there. Now I have that pressed on, let's continue on with our clamp. Now this area, just like any other fuel line, needs to be properly secured. If it's loose, you might have a fuel leak or a vapor leak. After confirming this, we can make our way out from in this area. Now it's time to raise the fuel tank up to its mounting point, and we'll continue on with our 2 fuel tank straps. Now we're going to carefully clean the mounting area here. You need to confirm that it's still in good usable order. If this is rotted, the strap might break free, which can be extremely dangerous. This looks good, so we'll continue on. Make sure you clean and inspect that mounting bolt thoroughly and apply some blue thread locker approximately halfway up the threaded portion. Now we can install our fuel tank strap. We're starting on the inboard side. We'll take that and bring it up through that rectangular slot and then slide it down into a rested position. Now we can pivot it over towards the next mounting point. For this bolt, we're going to start it in, snug it up. The torque will be 35 foot-pounds. Torque wrench. Just like before, we need to clean and inspect the mounting area. Also the mounting bolt with some blue thread locker. Now it's time for our rearward strap. We're going to bring it up at an angle, slide it into its groove. Now we can start pivoting it and we'll bring it over towards the driver's side frame. We'll flex this. Press it up. Now, just as before, once you have it started in, snug it up, and the torque for this is also 35 foot-pounds. Get that torque wrench. Now that we have the fuel tank straps installed, we can continue on along the front here. We'll start with our vapor line or evap line. Press that in, listen for a click. We're attempting to pull it off. It should not slide away. Now it's time for the fuel line. Once again, press it on, listen for a click. A light tug, now we're going to lock this down. One more quick inspection here, confirming if nothing's loose, and let's continue on the back side of the fuel tank. Now here's where we have our next 2 evap lines. As I mentioned during the removal process, you don't have to worry about mixing them up. They only fit into one particular area. Press them in, listen for a click, give them a tug. Now it's time to reinsert our drive shaft. We're starting at the transfer case. Line it up, press it in. Now we'll follow it all the way towards that rear differential. Now we're bringing this over in a position. We need to align our marks that we made on the drive shaft and the rear differential yoke. Continuing on, we have our 4 mounting bolts. Use some blue thread locker for these. We'll start them all in before tightening any of them. They're all started in, let's snug them up. We'll do this in a crisscross manner. Now that I have them all snug, I'm going to torque these to 65 foot-pounds. Get my socket on there. Let's get this last one. There we are. Now that we've got that installed, we're making our way back towards the front of the drive shaft where it connects to the transfer case. Clean any mess in this area. Now, if you did lose any fluid from the transfer case, make your way to the fill plug. You can use a 3/8 drive extension to remove this fill plug, add the manufacturer specified fluid up to the top of the port here. Let it slowly trickle out. Once it stops trickling, go ahead and install that, make sure it's tight, and clean your mess. Back in the wheel well, we need to make sure that we resecure this clamp, holding our fuel filler neck in place. Right there is bottomed out. We'll just take it a tiny bit further. We do not want to strip out this clamp. Make sure it's properly secured. Let's make our way back up to where the fuel cap's located. Now we're up in this area. I'm going to protect this port so my screws do not fall inside. So I'm just going to use a rolled up rag. Doesn't need to be anything special here. I've got my screw on my magnet. Now I can align it. We're going to start in each one of our 3 mounting screws before tightening any of them. Let's remove our port protector and reinstall our fuel cap. Turn the cap clockwise till you hear a click and close the fuel door. Now we're back along the side of the driver's side frame. It's time to reattach our electrical connector here. Line it up, press it on. Audible click, a light tug confirming it's secured, and protect this area. Now we're back up under the hood. We're going to reconnect our negative battery terminal. If you have any fuel on your gloves, you need to make sure that you replace those first. We'll tighten our 8mm headed mounting nut. Double check to make sure that's properly secured in place. Okay, friend, we finished our installation. The next thing you need to do is hop in the passenger compartment and start the vehicle. Once it is running, confirm that you have no fuel leaks. After that, you can go ahead and close the hood and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. the only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.